So in today's video, I'm going to cover how to prepare for an internal audit. And this video is in continuation to my last video, which I did for the key phases of the internal audit. So I'm going to cover one of the key phase, which is prior to conducting an audit, which is preparing for an audit. So I'll give you the details, what are the key steps and what are some of the do's and don'ts when you are preparing for an audit. So let's start. These are the three key steps to prepare for an internal audit. So first, you need to define the scope, and I'll give you the details about that. Then you need to prepare an audit plan, and what are the do's and don'ts? What are the different considerations when you are preparing an audit plan, depending upon the size of your organization, so on and so forth. And then how to review the documentation and prepare for the audit checklist. So these are some of the key steps that you need to be aware of when you are preparing for an audit. So let's start with the first step, which is the define the audit scope. So in that, it really depends upon the size of your organization, how big your organization is, and how many locations are there, what is the strength of the people, number of people and number of departments out there. So just to show you with the pictorial, if you have an organization chart like this or something similar like that, it is totally your call, totally your decision if you take few of the departments as the scope for this particular internal audit, or you may take the whole organization for the internal audit. So I can tell you with my experience that uh, in an organization which is like 50 to 200 people, a small medium sized organization, and if they're all located at one place, usually the internal audit takes place in one go, and the internal auditors, they audit the whole organization in next 2 or 3 days as they plan it. But again, that is subjective because sometimes the availability of the departments is not as per the audit schedule, and some of the organization may prefer that instead of doing the audit in 2 or 3 days, they may split it and they do one audit in one of the months and then another audit of the few departments in the next month, and that's how they cover the whole organization in a 1 year span of time. So it really depends upon the size of the organization and how the internal audit manager is thinking of covering and the availability. So there are certain factors needs to be covered, but generally speaking, the preferred way or usual way for a small and medium sized organization is to cover the whole scope of the certification in one scope of the audit. But again, that's purely the decision of the organization. Then how to prepare an audit plan. So once you decide on the scope, then the next step is basically to correspond with the auditee. And auditee are the people who you will be auditing. You are thinking of auditing those people, or the department heads and the other supervisors for those processes. You informally contact them and you tell them that these are the days or these are the weeks of that month that you're preparing and you're planning for the audit, and then they can respond you that if they're available or the comfortable week is the second week or the third week for that month. And similarly, you also check for the availability of the auditors as well, that when the auditors are available and in those particular areas. But the primary consideration is the availability of the departments that needs to be audited. So that is one thing that is done informally by the audit manager, whoever is the audit in charge in your organization. And after you decide for those weeks of the audit, in these particular weeks or these particular dates that we need to plan for the audit, then an audit schedule or the audit plan is prepared. So there are a few consideration, and this is one of the sample audit plans, that how it looks like. And what I've given is that I'm considering that there are two teams which are going for the audit, and team one can be one audit member or can be a couple of audit members, and team two can be one and similarly couple of audit members. So it all depends upon the number of auditors that you may have, their availability. And it can be one, it can be only the first two columns as well, that you are going as one team and you are auditing few departments in your organization. So again, this is one of the audit plans, and you can have other audit plans. But the few of the considerations that one should keep in the preparing an audit plan is the departments are the key departments that you will be considering for an audit, and how much time you're going to spend in those departments. So this time management is very, very important, vis-a-vis the size of the organization, vis-a-vis the size of the department, the number of processes in those departments. So for example, if you're auditing a human resource department as compared to a production department. So clearly you can understand that in human resource department, the number of processes that you'll be covering versus the production department would be there would be a difference between the processes and the things that you need to verify. And there's another point is the consideration of the clauses that may apply to those respective departments. So what you are required to do is to consider respective time for those departments. Like for example, you cannot give production the same amount of time as you are giving to the human resource department. The production time has to be more than the human resource department, and so on and so forth. So we call that the office space departments versus the production the field departments. And again, that depends upon the nature of the standard as well, which standard is in consideration. If that is an information security standard, probably human resource will have a lot more time as well as compared to the production department because of the nature of the information that is out there. But let's talk about the general departments, which are, let's talk about the general standards, which are my quality, environment, and health and safety. So human resource has a smaller role to play as compared to the production of the main core business operations where the production is going on. And that is how we allocate the time. The other consideration is that we consider the key departments towards the start of the audit as well. So, meeting, if I'm doing a quality control, if I'm doing a 9001 audit, I would like to see my production and quality control with a lot of emphasis on that. If I'm doing ISO 14000, which is my environment management system, or health and safety management system, then I would pay attention to my field workers, those who are into the field, which are again my core business operations, but then again my warehouse departments, my maintenance people, who are not producing who are not part of the production, but they are being exposed to a number of hazards which may impact the human being out there, or they may be having a number of aspects which may impact the environment. So again, it depends upon number of factors that you consider while making an audit plan. So that's how you make the audit plan, and you make sure that all the auditees know about this audit plan so that they can be well prepared for this audit activity. Then you assign qualified auditors who will audit which department. The one of the key consideration is their knowledge on the standard. They should be knowledgeable about the standard, and then they should acquire the knowledge of that process that they are about to audit. The important thing about all the ISO standard is that you cannot put the same auditors from the same department. So you need to ensure cross functioning. Every auditor needs to audit other department, and you cannot audit your own department. So that's called cross functioning, which is stated as objectivity and impartiality in ISO standards. Then we have the communication. So we need to communicate all these audit plans to the auditor and the auditee well ahead of time so that they can be well prepared. The auditee should know what time they need to be available for the audit, and the auditor should know at which time they need to be go and audit which department. That leads us to the another step, which is my third step, which is another key step for the auditing process, and that comprise of reviewing the audit documents. And you need to review the related documentation of those process, get aware of the policies and procedures that applies to that particular department, and then you also need to review the related ISO standard and their respective clauses. So, for example, if you are going for 9001, then 8.5 is the clause for the production, 8.5.1, and so on and so forth. So, if I'm going for a warehouse in a health and safety standard ISO 45001, then my main focus would be the sixth clause. What are the hazards related to that, and the other eight clauses, which where it talks about the operational control. So you need to review. The auditor should be knowledgeable enough to review those clauses which applies to those particular processes or to those departments, and then review the related policies and procedures. And they need to any previous audit reports that were there. If they're not doing the first audit, they can review, and that will give them the feedback that how the previous audit has been performed, and they know the focus area if there were any non-conformities in the last audit, and that helps them in preparing an audit checklist. So audit checklist is a key instrument in an internal audit process which keeps you on the track. And I would highly recommend that every time an auditor is going to audit any internal auditor, they should be taking the audit checklist along. And the more customized the audit checklist can be for that particular process, that will ensure and that will maximize your yield as an auditor. So that will really add value to the whole audit process. If you review that documentation, if you review the related standards, and then you make your checkpoints related to that particular process, what you're about to check, and that will helps you keep on the track, and you may not miss out on any important issue or any important aspect for that particular audit. So that was a brief. And if we talk about the takeaways out of this small video, so one of the key things that you have must should have understood is the that you need to plan it thoroughly and involve stakeholders early. They should know that you are planning for an audit, that you're coming for an audit, so that you would there should not be any surprises for anyone, not for the auditor as well as for the auditee, and there would not be any conflict of the schedules. Second thing is that you need to prepare for an audit plan with due all the due considerations as I've told you: size of the scope, size of the organization, the scope of the audit that is out there, and the number of departments that is to be considered, the strength of the people in those departments, the number of processes that needs to be audited. So how much time you're going to allocate, which department you need to be auditing, which auditor will go into which particular department, maintaining the cross functioning, that all the considerations that you need to make sure while developing an audit plan. Then the audit checklist. So it's key to every auditor, before prior to the audit, they should review the documentation related, what are the policies and procedures. They should also review the uh, related ISO standards, and they should prepare checklists. So even plain checkpoints, that these are some of the key areas that I'm going to focus upon. These are the things that I'm going to verify. Lastly, the timely communication. So timely communication is very, very important. Even when you are planning for the audit, and once you have planned for the audit, then how would you communicate the audit plan? So typically a week before, 10 days before the actual audit date, if you can communicate it to all, that will be great and will add a lot of value to the whole audit process. So my friends, that is a brief about the how to plan for an internal audit. I hope this video must have helped you. And in my next video, as I'm covering this series of the videos regarding the how to plan an audit and how to conduct an audit and how to report an audit, so I'll be talking about the some of the do's and don'ts regarding how to conduct an audit. What are the some of the interpersonal skills that plays a key role in conducting an audit? What are the things that you should look for, and how to manage the whole audit process? So in the next video, I'll be covering that area. And in case you are interested in any of my other trainings, I have a whole list of trainings available on my website, and I conduct a number of online sessions on all these standards and trainings. So you can check that out as well. And hopefully, I'll see you in my next video. Till then, thank you.